and welcome to the North Austin Muslim Community Center. Tonight, for the very first time in Congressional District 31, a candidate forum is being held inside of a mosque. Let that sink in for a second. A mosque, a place of worship, a place of community, and now tonight, a place for democracy. Before we get further into it, I want to take a moment. I want to acknowledge all the efforts from the NAMCC Executive Council and all the volunteers who have dedicated their time and effort for this event to happen. Please give them a round of applause. So let me walk you through what tonight looks like. First, we'll start with opening statements. Each of the candidates will have 3 minutes apiece to introduce themselves, to tell you the platform upon which they're running, and why they're running in the first place. We'll then shift over to a pre-selected Q&A. 5 questions selected by the organization committee that represent the values and the issues facing our community today. Each candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer these questions. Next, we'll do a live Q&A from the audience. Behind me, a QR code will appear. You'll scan your phone to the QR code, insert your question, and it may get answered by 1 or 2 of the candidates. Lastly, once we're finished, we'll have some food. You'll have a chance to meet the candidates, interact with them on a personal level, and take photographs if you so choose. As required by law, NAMCC is a 501c3 nonprofit. They do not endorse, support, or oppose any individual political party or candidate. For full transparency, all 3 candidates running for Congressional District 31 were invited to tonight's forum. That includes incumbent Republican Mr. John Carter. Unfortunately, Mr. John Carter did not accept our invitation to be here tonight. Let's introduce the candidates. First up, we have Greg Stoker. And you may already know Greg Stoker. His updates from the global Samut flotilla made headlines and resonated millions of views across all platforms. Greg sailed on a boat towards Gaza with medicine and aid and was subsequently arrested, detained by the Israeli military for a period of time. An Army Ranger combat veteran, Greg Stoker is a prominent geopolitical analyst, and he uses his platform to advocate for the end of wars and genocide. He is running for Congress as part of the Green Party. Greg Stoker, everybody. Next, we have Justin Early. Justin Early is also a veteran, a lifelong community organizer, and a devout father of 7 children. It's very impressive. Justin served as a paratrooper and then served in the Pentagon. Justin understands what service means. He understands the freedom of religion and the First Amendment rights that apply to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Early. And with that, I'll pass the mic over to Greg Stoker, who will get started with his introduction and opening statement.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Mohammed. And thanks for having me here. It's great to meet you, and I'm honored to have been invited. So, if you don't know me, I guess you have the intro. My biggest issue right now is the ongoing war with Iran. As I like to say, that every imperial war that we fight is a war on the global working class, which every one of us is a part. You know, it's not just all these foreign wars that we're like untouched by every day. I like to tell people, especially veterans who are still struggling with how to conceptualize year after year after year of war in West Asia. It's like you have more in common with those drowned Iranian sailors than you will ever have with the politicians in DC currently running our administration. So, unfortunately, there's a bunch of geo-strato tankers staging out of Ben Gurion Airport right now. It looks like hostilities are going to reopen over this weekend. And over the past couple of years, I've endeavored to show that during the presidential election in 2024, a lot of people who had concerns about foreign engagements were tracking the impact that they had back on the United States and certain communities within the United States. They called us single-issue voters. I'm sure a lot of you heard that, but I think we really are single-issue voters. It is the entire system at play that extracts from both communities abroad and here at home and has nothing to offer you except cut programs and violence. So I debated whether on what platform or what party I wanted to run. Independent would have been nice, but I wanted to do third party because over the years I used to be a Democratic voter, and I don't see any movement or any opposition party to what's actively going on here. I have friends in the Progressive Caucus who I've worked with over the years, and I think they're great, and I support them. However, as an institution and an entity, I do not believe that we're going to see any meaningful change. And I know a lot of people are excited about this blue wave coming, and if that's what you believe in, excellent. I'm not trying to move you in any way, but I do believe that the path forward that we slowly have to work for is alternative sources and systems of power. And that's why I'm running on this platform. I know some people were frustrated about it, but it's absolutely what I believe in. And thanks so much for having me.
Hello everybody, my name is Justin Early. First I'd like to say thank you Greg, thank you Mohammed, and thank you NAMCC for hosting us here today. My name is Justin Early, as I stated. I am a father, I'm a veteran, I'm a husband, and I'm also the Democratic nominee for Congressional District 31. And why I'm running is because families just like mine, just like yours, are suffering every day. They're working harder for less and less and less. And what we have today in representation in District 31 is a lack of representation. What I'm going to do when I'm elected is I want to be your representative. I want to speak to you, I want to know who you are, I want to be not only an ally, but I want to be a part of your community. We have today a lot of things happening in the world, and we can't solve every single problem, but what we need to do is make sure we are electing people who are going to have the same heart as you, the same drive as you, and have suffered just as you have suffered. Because until we understand each other's suffering, we cannot change this world. District 31 is a very unique place, and people have asked me, what is it going to take to win this district? And I've told them it takes three things. It takes the map, it takes the math, and it takes the mobilization. The map is something interesting because the Republicans gave us this map last year in September, July, September, and November, when they tried to redistrict this back, right? The mid-decade redistricting was new and different, but what it did was allow Killeen to be back in this district. It's a lot of black and brown communities who were previously not represented. That's a lot of people who, just like you and me, who are struggling every day. And now we have this collection of people in this one contiguous area that we can win this seat back. John Carter is scared of that. The second thing is the math. And the math is very important because what we had seen in March in the primaries for the Republican and Democratic parties, we have seen, first and foremost, we had the second most ever votes for Democrats in the primary in this district. And the number one receiver of those votes of all time in this district was myself. That means something. That means the math is out there. The people are listening, they want to know, and they want to vote. So we have to give them something to believe in. But once they've believed in something, what do we do next? And that's the last thing. That's the mobilization. That's what this room is. That's what this conversation is. That's who we are. We get people out there. I ran this platform on three different things: security, dignity, and opportunity. And security is where we will focus on a lot today, because it's not just border security, it's security in your home, it's security of healthcare. But we're doing all these things with dignity to provide opportunity for everybody here. So let's build better together. Thank you.
I think seeing as to how we're inside of a boss, it would be fitting to start our first question with the rise of Islamophobia. And my question for you would be, as you've seen in recent months and years, Islamophobia is on the rise in Texas. If elected to Congress, what specific steps would you enact to ensure that all people of all faiths, including Muslims, have a right to practice free of discrimination and uphold their civil liberties? Justin, starting with you.
Thank you. What a phenomenal and fitting question. The rise of Islamophobia here is threatening not only to these people, you people in the room here, but to me as well. When I talk about struggle, I see the very same similarities that they're doing to your communities that they've picked with other people of color in the United States. So that's something we need to actually call out and do. The specifics of what I would do is, first and foremost, there's the No Ban Act that's actually in Congress right now. I would support that. Ilhan Omar, Cory Booker, they are behind legislation that is actually making it illegal further to further these Islamic or anti-Islamic practices. The second thing I would do is I would bring not only an ally to you, but I want to involve you into my staff. I want to know what your concerns are, because while I can sit here like some other politicians every 2 years and say I want your vote and I'll be here with you, I don't think that's the right way to get things done. It takes a multicultural coalition to get these things done, and on my staff here in DC, I will invite you guys there with me. And the third and final thing I will do is, without being on specific committees, without being on certain things, that's the real work to be done. I'll also use my platform in order to speak out against Islamophobia, because that's what some things people are not doing today. They're afraid to speak about it. I'm not a career politician, so I'm not threatened by somebody coming after me, because my job is to represent you, not to represent donors. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. I've been talking about this for a number of years now. Islamophobia is the main Trojan horse that affects every single one of us every single day. It's what's been used to expand the national security state, to assault civil liberties, to impoverish us, to fund massive defense projects and surveillance projects. And we have no say and no representation in every marginalized community that's attacked. And of course, now that we're constantly in a war state, the Muslim community is at the forefront and has been for decades now. Apparently we haven't learned anything. They need to be protected. And one of the ways to do that is to actually enforce the laws that exist already. And of course, I remember when the stabbing happened on West Campus, south of here. Y'all had to fight just to get that classified as a hate crime. And it's more than just enforcing acts as well. There are also incredibly problematic laws going into place in here and other states, like anti-BDS laws, which all feed into this climate of fear that's exploited by what we can call the ruling class to divide us and impoverish us. So Islamophobia is, in my view, a working class issue that's at the forefront of all of our civil liberties. It is a community that has been consistently attacked. It's almost normalized. And not just the legislative part. I've talked about how we're in an existential information war. So I have a platform I've been using. I'm going to use this election campaign to try to generate national news about this and platform this issue that I've been fighting for quite a while now. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Staying on the topic of Muslims, let's talk about the Middle East. The United States has maintained a significant military presence in the Middle East over 2 decades now, including as most recently Iran. As a potential member of Congress, what is your position on the continued U.S. military presence in Iran, the authorization for use of military force, and what responsibilities do we owe veterans and their families who ultimately bear the cost of these wars? Greg, starting with you.
The fact that the authorized use of military force, which was signed in during the onset of the global war on terror, still exists is absolutely absurd, and it's endemic that once we put things into place militarily, we never leave. But we have a small presence in Afghanistan, Iraq. We never leave, and this existential war of choice with Iran, we went into it knowing exactly what would happen. There have been Pentagon position papers on this war for a long time. We must realize now that the wars are not meant to be won. They're meant to last forever. Now the Pentagon budget is about to go, some people are saying up to $2 million to pay for this Golden Dome, which we do not need. We have seen a level of exquisite warfare, which is where we produce things that don't actually fight conflicts, but just go into defense contractors. And of course, veterans the entire time, not only do we devastate countries around the globe, don't win any wars in a really extractive process, we pretend like we try to take care of veterans. Well, if you look at what the Koch brothers are trying to do with the privatization of the VA, cutting 40,000 essential staff from the Veterans Affairs, to get on the list for mental health care, is a 4 to 5 month process in some Texas VAs. And yeah, we don't really support veterans. We draft them, we draft the soldiers. You know, we tempt them with socialism to go and enforce capitalism overseas with all these social programs that they're going to get, but everything is getting taken away right now. All of these foreign wars only impoverish the rest of us, and there's no plan. There's no plan for any of this to end. There's no exit strategy. We are just continuing to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And veterans from this generation, I was a millennial, are going to have even less benefits and access to benefits than we have now. And I don't generally like to focus on just the veterans because we have devastated so many other people. I think the genocide in Palestine is endemic of that. We're talking about veterans that fight these wars, but like our own citizens are losing countless members of their family, not just in here, but the West Bank and southern Lebanon. In Iran, one of my colleagues lost one of her family members in these bombing campaigns, which are not hitting military targets. So yeah, it's an entire institutional and systemic problem that needs to be dismantled. We need to cut military spending, bring the money back home, and support our own service members and families and working families in general.
Yes, exactly. The authorized use of military force that was started in 2001 and 2002, they've been bastardized so much that they don't even recognize originally what it was about and what it was supposed to be. To that same end, we are actually having these perpetual wars that are going on forever and ever and ever to then line the pockets of billionaires and all these people. 100% agree. I believe that surveillance capitalism is one of the worst things. Sidebar, somebody asked me what would I work for to fight for free, and I'd fight surveillance capitalism. Because I believe that's really at the crux of all this that's happening to us in our country. We are going across the world into different areas in order to enrich those who are back here at home. But it doesn't actually happen for you or me. We're spending money to harm people who look like us, you, me, whomever, in order to bring money back for those who already have enough. We don't take social programs seriously here in this country, and that goes directly to the VA. As a veteran, my parents are both veterans, my sister's a veteran, my son is in the military, my daughter has already served in the military. We come from a deep, rich military family, so we understand what happens at the other end of this equation. A lot of times when we talk about these things, they're always one-sided, but the other side of the equation needs to be also balanced as well. And when we talk about when we're going to war, we're doing anything that's on this side of the world, we have to genuinely understand what is happening. We're putting people's lives at risk on both sides. And we have to bring those people back and take care of them over here. One of the things I say in and around Colleen is if you truly support the troops, if you truly support veterans, you support the community around the veterans. And the problem with that is we're not supporting communities because we're going across the world to enrich other people and kill those others. I don't support that, so as a member of Congress, I would actually fight the AUMF directly, and then also any wars that are getting started have to have deep and understanding of why we're going to war as well. Because simply because somebody looks different than me or prays different than me does not give us authorization to go across the world and kill them.
Thank you. I want to shift gears and talk about something that I think hits home for a lot of Muslim Americans that are in this room. When I was telling people about this event, one of the questions that I got most frequently was, well, all parties let us down. There's no real party that supports us. And I want to talk to you about community trust and political accountability. Muslim Americans voters have expressed deep frustration that both major political parties have failed to represent their interests, particularly in the context of Gaza. How do you respond to the feeling of political abandonment? What specifically would you do differently to earn and keep the trust of the Muslim American community, especially in Congressional District 31? Greg, start with you.
Thanks. I really sympathize. I can't relate to the experience of being a Muslim in the surveillance and national security state, but I sympathize with the idea of feeling politically homeless when I was working as an analyst and a commentator during 2024. I was like, guys, Harris is not going to win for these reasons. And then there was some hope among conservatives that Trump was going to come in and be this anti-war candidate. And I was like, no, Trump is going to be the absolute raw face of U.S. self-destructive imperialism. And no one's really working to stop it. We're looking at D.C. and we're watching Chuck Schumer whip votes to actually make sure war powers resolutions do not pass. And again, I have friends in the Progressive Caucus that I really respect, but as an entity, yeah, I'm not going to trust the Democratic Party. I'm not going to trust the Republican Party. I can't do it. So going forward, moral consistency. Maybe if I have to be politically homeless, I will. I'm here to represent the interests of the district, which is not just the Muslim community, which is part of our societal fabric, whether or not other people in districts want to recognize that or not. But we have to fight for all of us and each other. So as a member of Congress, if it happened, I can caucus with whoever and whatever I would want to. And I would remain, like I always have been, morally consistent. I am not taking any corporate or PAC money. I have no stocks. I don't necessarily want to be doing this, but there's not really any strong vision of leadership or a path forward. So a lot of people, and I was just up at speaking at Cornell University with student organizations, and they're super politically active. I asked them, are you guys going to vote this year? Because they're some of the most politically active people. And they're like, no. So I'm here to represent people who are completely disenfranchised by the system. And again, that's going to be a lot of younger folks too. So, thanks.
So first and foremost, having a political home is more than what the party platform is. There was a decision I had to make at some point when I was going to run for this seat. First and foremost, I'm running because I feel a calling to do this. I want to represent people in and around my home, my family, my community. And so this is something I've made a decision to do every single day. And it is a conscious choice that I will fight every day for. However, deciding to be a Democrat was not exactly an easy decision because being a Republican was an extremely easy decision. That is definitely not going to happen. However, being a Democrat frustrates me just as much because they speak a lot of words, but they don't do the actions. And that's the problem. We have Muslim members of Congress today. We have people who would believe the same way as we would believe to fight against these things. So we need to build coalitions around them. We need to get them together and actually fight together with this. I love the idea of being, politically homeless and then making a stand for yourself. But the United States of America doesn't have that type of political system. We have a two-party system, and while there is a few fringe people, it's difficult to build that coalition without that. So I'm here to make sure we build that coalition. I am not trying to be under the Chuck Schumers of the world or those people because I believe they're doing it wrong. If we give power back to people who've had power for the last 30 years, we're going to end up the exact same way. And so I'm here to be part of the new generation of leadership of the Democratic Party, and I want to represent you with doing that. Thank you.
Thank you both. Let's talk about the economy and cost of living. Beyond being a religious institution, NAMCC hosts weekly charitable drives where they give food, pantry items, clothes, and even rental assistance. Based on what I was told, the amount of people showing up to these drives has drastically increased in the last year and a half. So cost of living in Congressional District 31 is a problem. As I said, families across Congressional District 31 are struggling with the rising cost of housing, groceries, and healthcare. What concrete legislative actions would you prioritize to address economic concerns that are faced by members of Congressional District 31, including many Muslims as well? Justin, starting with you.
Yes, affordability is the number one thing on my platform when I talk about. So when I talk about build the campaign around security, opportunity, or dignity and opportunity, the three policy platforms I have are one, affordability. That's healthcare, that's housing, that's food. Here in Texas 31, you've lost 25% of your spending power in the last 10 years. That kind of money doesn't go anywhere. It goes to the people at the top, the billionaires, the leading class, the work, whatever you want to call them. They're not the working class. If you own a small business here, costs went up for you. If you eat food, costs went up for you. And so concrete legislation looks like we need to actually enact the laws that we currently do have. We need to expand programs that actually bring food back to people, bring money back to NAMCC in order to provide the food for those people. Also, we need to expand what we have for healthcare and Medicare and Medicaid. Because if we have healthcare costs taken care of, that's one less thing that we need to worry about getting food on the table. I'm also a big proponent of labor, so making sure we have strong labor laws in order to make sure people can fight for their wages of what needs to happen here. And the final thing that I want to make sure we're doing is we have a strong democracy. Because I can't fight for affordability, I can't fight for the things I want to do without a strong democracy. And so those are the things I would fight for you for. Thank you.
Socialism for the rich, bootstraps for everybody else. And that's everybody in this room, regardless of profession. You're the people who make this society run, not the generationally wealthy private equity billionaires controlling our politics. So basically, every working class issue, which the cost of living is a working class issue, and of course that's a nebulous term, but it encompasses everyone who contributes to society, no matter what your occupation, has always and only ever been solved by working class people. It's never not been. We're not just going to vote our way out of it. We need to be dogpiling this from every angle. That's why I'm running. That's what I intend to push while I'm in Congress. We are not the richest country on earth. We're the country with the richest people on earth who have monopolized all the wealth and the resources, and it's only getting worse. So baseline things that we need to be taught that we deserve, that we've been propagandized against: universal health care. Whatever that means to you, you need to have access to it, just like every other developed nation on earth. Child care would be great. The fact that people can't go to work or figure out their lives because there's no child care, absolutely insane. There needs to be a revitalization of social programs, and I also agree, labor protections in Texas, it's one of the most abysmal states for it. And we're not going to get anything or make any improvements as legislators without the support of labor movements. And that comes from us supporting and bolstering and buttressing labor movements as well. So we got to be dogpiling these issues from every angle, and that includes electoral politics and actually on the ground, like mutual aid and community aid, which you guys are doing here at this institution.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we're going to shift to our audience Q&A. If you scan the QR code there, you'll be able to ask a question. But while people ask their questions, I want to ask an additional question. I want to talk about AI. And AI is at the forefront of a lot of concerns for a lot of people right now, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in computer engineering, whatever your field is, there's a real impact associated with AI. Will people lose jobs? Is there an AI bubble? Do we need supplemental income if AI takes off? Will either of you support AI regulation? If so, what capacity of regulation would you support? Greg, starting with you.
I absolutely support AI regulation. We saw a massive expansion of what that means, and also I support AI regulation because I think you referred to the bubble just now. Yeah, we have these massive trillion-dollar investments with no clear sign to profitability for a lot of these companies. If you look at our GDP, it's all based off of speculative, ROIs from OpenAI and Gemini and all this stuff, but this ride's not going to last forever. Also, we don't have the supply chains in place to really support it. Now that helium is being blocked out of the Strait of Hormuz, that goes into fund factories, or chip factories in South Korea and Taiwan, and our biggest bottleneck to the expanding AI infrastructure so we can meet these return on investments and not bring this whole house of cards down, is also being stressed by this war. This has been kind of like the Wild West. Silicon Valley has always been overriding platform has been move fast and break stuff. Well, it's on the verge of contributing to breaking our entire cultural and social landscape and economic landscape as well. I absolutely support AI regulations to include federal moratorium on data centers until we can actually hold these companies accountable, because they say it out loud. They say exactly what they want to do out loud, which is replace us and tempt us with a universal basic income. Elon Musk says it. It's never going to happen. They don't want that to happen. So it's a very expansive subject, but there absolutely needs to be the hardest regulations and moratoriums on a lot of these issues until we can actually figure out what's going on.
Yeah, so my three policy platforms are affordability, and the second was responsible technology and AI regulation. And so I absolutely believe in AI regulation because it hurts the American worker. But not only does it hurt the American worker, the government should be very concerned about this, because where does the tax revenue come from? It comes from the American worker. And so if the government really had a concern about this, they would be looking at this as well. So it is one of the number one things that I want to focus on when I get to Congress. But as far as the universal basic income, the things that we need to have, there absolutely needs to be something that's given to people, because while we are losing jobs to AI, I don't truly believe those jobs are all from AI. We're shielding bad business policies. We're shielding bad CEOs. They're the ones who are firing people for whatever reason they tell us. And if they say it's AI, that could help the bubble grow, but it also gives them a scapegoat to say, here's the problem that's going on. So we need to have real investigations of what's happening inside of these companies, what's happening with these AI, with the models that are being built. But secondly, or most importantly to me, is what end are they doing this? You know, I have said before that we have built tools from the dawn of time, hammers to excavators to build things. But never before have we built a tool that takes our imagination. And that's what AI is trying to do. And they talk about solving the $1 trillion problem, and Greg is absolutely right. The $1 trillion problem they're trying to solve is labor. They don't want to have to pay us. And whatever they give us in the end is what we're supposed to accept. And so while that be a whole change of how we deal in the world, I would not agree with that. We need to fight those things. And the final point to this is the environment. Because while we're utilizing these systems to build out AI, build these models and build out data centers, we're taking water for human beings, we're taking air from human beings, and we're raising the temperature of the environment. And that's why this tool needs regulation.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions coming in. And typically I wouldn't ask this one, but I think it's worth asking. The Epstein files. Are either of you in the Epstein files?
No. That's why it's going to be a challenging race.
If I was in it, I feel like it'd be a shoe-in.
So another question we have is AIPAC money. AIPAC, the pro-Israeli American relationship lobby. Are you guys taking any contributions from AIPAC, or do you plan on taking any contributions from AIPAC anytime in the future or anytime in your political career? Starting with Greg.
Well, it's not just AIPAC, it's also dark money, and they're bundling it in weird ways, so we're just doing a blanket, no PAC money. So, yeah, or corporate money, thanks.
Yeah, I as well am not taking any AIPAC money. I saw what they did to Cori Bush. I saw what they did to other people whenever you go speaking against those in power. We're sending money over to Israel for them to have, universal health care, for them to have free education, and we're not getting anything back over here, right? You guys as a community are sending $1.2 billion across the ocean in order to help humanitarian causes, yet we can't even fund things over here. So I'm not going to take money from people who want to continue the bombing campaigns that are happening over there. Secondly, on the point of PACs, I do take PAC money because I do things for labor unions and those things, and that's one way to get money in. But I do not want to take dark money, or if dark money comes, it's not my money. It's going to do whatever for the best for the community. That's not something I'm going to work with or work for, because I want to answer to you. I don't want to be beholden to somebody in the back behind the screens in order to use me like a puppet or a marionette. I'm here to work for you, not to work for them.
A lot of the questions that are coming in have to do with Islamophobia. People are asking, how do we get your assurance that you will absolutely, truly support us, have our back, and campaign against Islamophobia? Not just release statements denouncing Islamophobia when it appears, but take legislative action. Many people, many politicians, once elected, changed their tune. What would you do? Starting with Greg.
I'll keep doing what I have been doing, which is to advocate for the rights of everyone in this country, and especially the most targeted group of people, at least from a national security perspective, which is Muslims. And I see them as an existential front line for protecting the rights of all people in the United States. So legislative action, again, just enforcing the laws that already exist. The BAN Act is a good first start. And again, I don't think this is just going to be tackled through legislation. Honestly, public opinion and fighting an information war to change people's perspective globally, nationally, is what's going to inform how people vote on legislation. Politicians, what they can think is like politically viable. Can I actually vote on a piece of legislation that protects Muslims without committing political suicide? Before that happens, we got to change people's, I hate to use a global war on terror term, you probably remembered, hearts and minds, because we want to throw up. But like that's it. Like that's one of the one of the main arenas where we're going to do this. And, you know, like in terms of like military theory going forward, I see this as an information war. And information is how most wars are going to be fought going forward. So I see it as an existential battle for the future of this country, and I'm just going to keep fighting.
I would say first and foremost, I've already stated this before, is I want you on my team. You know, I want you to work with me because I cannot be everywhere at once. I can't know everything. And so in order to hold me accountable, I need you as close to me as I can possibly be. The second thing is utilize the platform of a congressman to state exactly what Greg says. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Not only are we supposed to be writing legislation and voting on legislation that go yes or no to help your community, but also need to speak up and speak out about things. Those are things that are happening today. There are times where your community is under attack and we hear nothing from those in power. We hear nothing. And I think that's the wrong answer. And the final thing, the third thing I think I would love to do is I want to learn more about your community. I'm a very big reader. I love reading. I love understanding. And so this is something that helps me share and understand your perspective. While I can see things as a similarity to things I've grown up with and how things are gone, I can't see it through your eyes. And so if I get more knowledge, more information, was it 4 months ago I finished at one day everybody will always have been against this, and that opened my eyes not only to what's happening over in Palestine, but also AOC and how she's actually operating. And while I thought of her as a great progressive person, I was astounded that she says nothing about the genocide that's happening over in Gaza. And so I want to learn and do more because not only can I be an ally, not only can I use my platform, but I want to continue to learn and understand and know from you.
Thank you. We have another question regarding homeless and mentally unstable folks who are migrating from the core of Austin into Williamson County, the parts of Williamson County. What resources do these people need? How would you deal with these people coming in from Austin to Williamson County? Just starting to do.
So one thing, I don't know if you guys know this about Congress and about the legislature, is we got rid of pork belly, we got rid of adding things in the bills, right? And that would be how we can have more community dollars back into the area. And so instead of doing pork belly that they got rid of, what we do now is called community block grants, right? Or community block grants, that's what they're called. And so Congressman, me, can come in and say, here's what's needed in this area. Here's $1.2 million for X. Here's $1.4 million for Y. And so what we need to do is actually build anchors for people in order to go to and have, but that's where we can put money into the community. And knowing what the community needs is how we can actually expand on that and do those things. As far as mental health goes and what happens with that, we need serious mental health care in this country. Not all injuries are visible, and as a veteran and as a soldier, I understand what it is. My brother-in-law himself suffers through PTSD. He self-medicated himself on things, and he has really struggled with stuff. And so for me, how do we actually help him, people that we know? And that's by building communities around them. We have lots of great medication, lots of great community actions on things for like elderly, those who cannot do for themselves, that we can do the same thing for mental health care. And I believe putting money and dollars from Congress into that is where we need to go.
One of the big cop-out answers that you see from a lot of Congress people in Texas, and this goes through like all these local issues, from the homelessness issue to data centers, it's a state issue. You know, I only do federal legislation, and that's simply not true. You mentioned block grants. There's a lot of influence you can have. You can utilize your platform to actually influence change within the communities. You have access to the national press, and it's just simply a cop-out that we keep going time and time again. You know, this is an issue that a lot of Texas politicians have been absolutely belligerent towards the homeless population, and a lot of those, again, are veterans. That's how I got into homelessness advocacy, because a lot of my friends, after like 4 combat deployments, are not able to have a job. They get disability, but they can't have it. They always get evicted somehow. And then mental health, best friend coming out of the military killed himself. That's kind of like par for the course. And it's just not a priority here. And federally, not just in Georgetown and stuff. The solution is going to be jail, prison. And if that doesn't work, that's never worked, and it's made to manufacture essentially free labor for the state. And when we see all these systems collapsing and all these social programs collapsing, I'd like to remind everybody that this is part of the plan. That, yeah, it's absolutely part of the plan. And a war against the homeless people, is just a prelude to what they're going to do to all of us. And as a congressperson, yeah, you might not be able to do all you can do, like as a state rep, but you have a massive influence, especially in your own district and towards the federal conversation at large.
Thank you. A couple more questions here. So, you both say that you learn about different cultures and different religions. What life experiences have you had with Muslims, whether here or abroad during your service, that you can speak to in dealing with the Muslim culture and people, Muslims all over the world, rather? Starting with you.
Unfortunately, when I was still working for the U.S. military, I did 4 combat deployments to Afghanistan. I grew up in Central Texas. I had no real idea what Islam was or who Muslims were. The first time I met them was when I was serving with them attached to the Afghan National Army. And of course, since then, a lot of the propaganda and the immense dehumanization that goes against this community has borne out year after year, experience after experience, to be complete, utter fabrication and lies meant to justify foreign intervention and the expansion of the national security state here at home. Beyond that, I lived in India for a while. I lived in Muslim neighborhoods in Mumbai, in Maharashtra, and I lived in Muslim neighborhoods in Goa, which is very small. It's mostly a Catholic province. But yeah, I lived among Muslims, and now I work with Muslims who are both journalists, analysts, activists, almost every day on the regular. And I'm still learning more and more, but I've never experienced more hospitality and more acceptance, especially with my imperial past, than from the Muslim community. And I want to stand in solidarity with y'all and keep working with y'all, forever, in perpetuity, because I've found it very rewarding and enlightening. And again, thanks for having me.
My experience is not as expensive as Greg's, so that's envious. That's awesome. I've served in the military with Muslim soldiers. I've worked side by side with people, and I've understood what happens during Ramadan and that kind of stuff. So I know a lot of the basics that is there. But I'm continually a student of people and understanding cultures because I lost my mic. All right. Sorry for the interruption. Really what I want to say is that I'm a student of cultures and people. What I've learned while I travel different places, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in Asia, whether it be in South America, is that people are fundamentally the same. You go to bed, you wake up, you want to provide for your family, you want to know if you're secure in where you're living, what you're doing, and specifically around Muslims themselves, I see no difference in there. One of the things that I told somebody on my team today is I asked them, have you guys seen Malcolm X? And they said, yeah, I saw Malcolm X. I said, one of the most profound scenes that I came out away with was when he went to Mecca and he saw people of every color, every stripe, and every single economic status. And I said, we can learn a lot from that specific point right there. And I think what we can also do as people, as students of cultures, is share that information out. So that's what I want to keep doing, because I didn't live in Mumbai, but that's amazing. But I want to keep learning and studying from people. So thank you.
All right, the next question is for you, Greg. People want to know, a lot of people actually, can you summarize your experience in the flotilla and being detained and taken into Israeli custody?
Oh man, it's a long story. It took 2 weeks to cross the Mediterranean basin. I'll just go into why we did it. I was approached to organize a veterans delegation attached to the Global Smooth Flotilla to give a slightly different message. So I interviewed a bunch of former
veterans, and yeah, we raised for a boat, and I was brought on the Security Council on these like security and threat assessments for the flotilla itself. Going into Gaza, a lot of stuff happened. The basic thing we wanted to say as veterans is that we know firsthand that whatever violence, whatever forms of repression we employ overseas, always, almost immediately, comes back home. So this is why we call it the Palestine Laboratory, for instance. You know, if you go into the defense sector and the defense world, you'll see, like if you go to these trade shows for these different weapons, like Smart Shooter, or different spyware technologies, they'll talk about the Palestine Laboratory, tested in the West Bank, tested in Gaza. Well, all that stuff's at a local ICE office and local police department near you. And so Americans have been so disconnected from these wars that we fight. 250 years, 17 years of peace. It's just something that happens and it's so far removed. You know, we have two massive oceans, we got an ally to the north and to the south. We're never gonna get bombed. But then again, everyone needs to get involved because the war is also against you. And that's the simple message that we wanted to send. And then, of course, Israeli detention was a whole thing. And they wanted me to do interviews about it, but as someone who's familiar with the prison industrial complex, like, there's worse conditions here in Texas that our own inmates, many of whom are wrongfully convicted, are also going for. So, or going through in worse conditions than what we went through. So, thanks.
We have another question on Islamophobia. It's a hot topic. What do you think is the motivation behind the rise of Islamophobia? We see it, admittedly, on one side of the aisle. Why is this now so popular? Why is this the new shiny toy on the block? Starting with you, Justin.
Yeah, this is neo-Nazism. There's no other term to put it. We went from saying, you know, I'm not going to say the word out loud, you know, people what they called me, to now we're saying Muslim, Muslim, Islam, Islam. It's just traded hands from one hate to another. And as they continue to dominate the class, it's an interesting perspective where they built this us versus them kind of mentality. And it's so prevalent that they're us versus them. They are the them, and we are the us. But their hate is so prevalent that they want to make us hate us. And I think that's the huge problem, whereas we've grown from against, you know, Jews or against blacks or against the women. It's who do we click the political football to next? Every single political party has said they're going to do right for those people. But do they actually do those things? They do not. And the reason is because they don't call it out for what it is. And so if we actually identify neo-Nazism and Nazism that happened these days, then we can actually say that is the common enemy, and that is what we need to go fight against. That is the domestic terrorism in this country. And so that's what I believe.
Yeah, for sure. We also need a global enemy, too. And now that the commies lost during the unipolar moment, when during the fall of the USSR, it went straight to using these groups that we trained to fight them in Afghanistan and other parts of the world to being the new existential threat overseas that we have to use, not just here, but like we got to fight them over here so they don't come back here. Basically, what I generally say is, you'll never go bankrupt betting on white supremacy. Because it's also, I try to tell people this, I grew up in this part of Texas, it's bad for the white people too, because you make them scared of the brown other, be they Muslims or from other communities, they will make them scared. You know, you need ICE because they're coming for your children. Well, they will vote to bankrupt themselves, evict themselves, impoverish themselves, imprison themselves. And, you know, it reminds me of how, like, I don't think I have enough time for this, but, you know, how the early police force was started, you know? It was meant to, you know, take a bunch of disenfranchised, at least up in New England, a bunch of disenfranchised Irishmen and turn them against minorities, because they'd been treated like the minorities for so long. They didn't pay them well, they didn't treat them well, but they're like, hey, you're better than these people. You need to be scared of these people, because if you unite together, you know, you might threaten the ruling class. So it's a method of divide et impera, divide and rule, and it's also to enforce, you know, certain structures of systemic violence that we can call white supremacy.
Thank you, Frank. So we have time for 2 more questions. The first of which being, you discussed understanding the reasons behind U.S. wars, whether it's in Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, etc. Turns out our checks and balances was on the honor code system for the past 200 years. So how do we re-implement checks and balances when those checks and balances are being ignored left and right? Greg, starting with you.
Well, we need absolute civic engagement, and part of that is to find ways and use our platforms as aspiring Congress people to explain to folks what that actually looks like, to get to vote out war hawks and replace war hawks with more progressive candidates, be they in the Republican Party, the neocons, or the neoliberal hawks in the Democratic Party. Just vote them out, and so we can actually caucus together and force a war powers resolution. But again, voting's not just going to solve it, because again, you've got a guy who's a fossil in office whipping votes just to make sure one guy throws the whole game, and at the last minute, don't worry, we promise you'll get something in a couple years when you're up for re-election. We're going to take care of you, and that's how business is done. So structurally, systemically, we need to have a baseline for all politicians going forward while we can still vote and use the electoral process. Baseline is no more foreign wars or interventions. We've never, since the post-World War II moment, they've all been extra-legal, unjust, foolish, ending in absolute disaster. And this one will end in absolute disaster too. The problem is we have to find candidates and uphold the democratic process that will not accept money from the defense industrial complex, that will not be beholden to them, and that are actually not scared to be cleaved from whatever niche factions in Congress want to perpetuate these foreign wars.
I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So we talked about the wars, multiple U.S. interventions in the Middle East, and our checks and balances have failed, at least in the instance of war. So how do we re-implement checks and balances into a system where checks and balances are being ignored?
Thank you. And that's where my mind was first at. I just want to make sure I captured it. Well, because I've said this a lot, the problem with democracy can be fixed with more democracy. There's a lot of things that we're doing today that are non-democratic in the United States of America, and so we need to stop fooling ourselves that we are a truly democratic country. We need to talk about things that actually make ourselves undemocratic, and then break those systems down to add more democracy into it. The checks and balances specifically, we see today the executive branch has gone well above and beyond what they're allowed to do. But there's nothing to do once they're given the power to go and do those things. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress enacts, says if a war happens or not. But then the executive is supposed to go out and do those things. And today, those things are being done without Congress approval. So the first thing we do need to do, I think we do need to vote. One thing I talk about as well is that we are not in a democracy. We're in a competitive authoritarianism government. That is what this means. We have semblances of democracy, but not true democracy. And while they still allow us to go and vote, we need to go and vote these people out of there. 100% agree with Greg on that. We need to vote these people out. Because once the people out who are actually sustaining this status quo that we have today, then we can start talking about how we build democracy even stronger than where it was before. And the final point to this is we actually need to use our platforms and talk about what's happening. People who do things in the dark don't like the light. And if we use our platforms to talk about what the undemocratic things are happening today, then we can actually fix these systems. Because nobody wants to be heard as the person who is going behind doors and making deals that hurts their constituents, but then in the end, they're making money on the other side. So we need more accountability, more transparency, but also we need to vote out the people who are getting the status quo the way it is today.
Thank you. For our final question, Congressional District 31 has seen quite a few layoffs in multiple different sectors. Although this is not just a Congressional District 31 problem, rather a Texas problem, what specific actions can you take to address the increase of layoffs and the numerous people who are now unemployed and unable to provide for themselves and their families? Starting with you, Greg.
One thing we need to do for all these government layoffs is make sure that our tax money is actually going to us. First and foremost, that's it. People will talk about affordability. Why is this happening? It's not just about being replaced by AI. Like, people aren't getting laid off because AI. People are getting laid off because they're leaving they're just not hiring any more people. They're not hiring people anymore, and they're not incentivized to. I think it's not just laying people off, it's wage theft. It's one of the biggest crimes and the biggest grand larceny within our entire country. Companies are not being held accountable, or not being, there's no legislature in place to monitor managerial surveillance, workers' conditions. They have absolute free reign to do whatever they want. I would like to remind everybody that we're the only country, one of the only countries that we deal with in the developed world where companies can actually lay people off while they're in profitability. It's absolutely insane. So one of the things that I would like to do from a federal level is to make that, or they start to normalize making that not something that can happen in the United States. Because it's absolutely egregious, and we're what we call the only developed nation on earth that really does that. On the local level, it's a little bit more challenging, but like, we need to start recognizing and educating people, using our platforms to let people know that this is actually not normal. None of anything that's going on right now is normal. And I don't see a single member of Congress talking about things, radical ideas like wage theft, layoffs, when in profitability. It's absolutely unacceptable. We need to start moving the ball forward on that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not only a Texas problem, it's a whole United States problem, right? We are giving too much power to these companies, and Greg is absolutely right. We're one of the only developed countries in the world that allows layoffs while it's in profitability. I worked for a company before. A lot of you may own small businesses as well, and you understand what it means to be EBITDA positive by the end of the year. And I worked for this company that every single November and December, they fired 5 to 10 people in order to be EBITDA positive. That means their books look great, everything was good, and they can go back and say they did a good job. And then the very next January, what did they do? They hired back 5 to 10 more people, right? This only numbers game, this shell game that they're doing should be illegal. Because when I go to work, I expect to have a paycheck when I get done with it. When I give something to a company, I expect to get something back. The second point on this is that when we give money into the collective, our tax dollars in the collective, any company that pulls that back, I want 2 things to happen. 1, every dollar goes to somebody's pocket. I want that labor money, I want that small business, to be able to say, this is how many people they hired from the money that they got from the collective budget. And the second thing I want them to be able to do is have more accountability if they take money from the collective budget. If you're doing something such as the Spirit Airlines bailout, right? I believe the country should have some say in how Spirit Airlines actually handles their business. There's no reason that you should lay off people after you receive public money and then give the CEO $300 million, $500 million, or $4 million. I don't care what it is. If you're doing that much work more than a worker, then you have to show and prove that. But really what happens is the shell game that they have about moving money around so investors and shareholders can feel their profits. And what happens today is our current members of Congress, our current legislators, even the governor, all these people own stocks, they do insider trading, and they're able to make money on your suffering. And so what I would do as a member of Congress, what I will do, is I will fight against that. I will absolutely stand up for no insider trading inside of Congress. I will absolutely stand up for stronger labor laws, because I strongly believe that if I gave 20 years to a company, I should own a piece of that company. I believe that if I worked for that time, I should be supplemented for my income for the rest of my life as well. Not just the CEO, not just the CFO, but the worker who spent every day in there working for them. And so I want to make sure those workers are then taken care of. And the final point I want to give on this is I got a lot of flack in the very beginning of my campaign for standing up for unions and saying I'm a pro-union candidate. But I believe that unions are strong for a reason. Because we, the collective, that is the only legal recourse we have against these giant corporations. We have weekends because of unions. We have child labor laws because of unions. And so if that is the avenue that we have to strengthen our labor and get money back in our pockets, I'm absolutely about that. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that will conclude our candidate forum. Once again, we want to thank Justin Early and Greg Stuck for being here. Please round of applause. I also want to once again thank our volunteers. If you volunteered for this event, please raise your hand and stand up. I'd like for you to have another round of applause as well. So now they're going to stick around, right?
Yeah.
Good. They're going to stick around for a little bit. You'll have a chance to meet them, interact with them, take photos if you'd like. We'll have food, I think, now or pretty soon. So please stay around, have some food, interact with the candidates. And it's great that everybody was here. We want to do more events like this within our community. So thanks again very much for being here.